Good afternoon, Chairman Lathrop and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Justin Wayne, Justin-Wayne, and I represent Legislative District 13, which is North Omaha and Northeast Douglas County. To me, this is a very simple bill. It has to deal with conflicts of interest, or the appearance of. I don't believe there necessarily is a conflict of interest, but the appearance of one is concerning. I think first we have to understand that and most oftentimes, prosecutors are viewed by the public as part of law enforcement, or law enforcement is an extension of prosecutors. They're on the same side. As laid out in what's handed out to you today, a Guardian investigation that was done years ago, the political reality is most county attorneys, particularly in Nebraska, are elected. One of their main sources of campaign contributions come from oftentimes police unions. That should raise some red flags, at least it does, from the outskirts slipping into the judicial system. One of the primary purposes for a special prosecutor is to ensure that justice is served when the government prosecutor is doesn't have the ability or is potentially conflict of interest. As I stated, campaign finance conflicts, or the perception thereof, are inappropriate for the local prosecutor to pursue these type of cases. Understand, what I am attempting to do is change the law back to what it used to be. We actually changed the law, and according to the Guardian, a few years ago, to allow for the local prosecutors to prosecute these cases, but with the overwhelming concern that happened over the last 2 years, I think any perception to make sure there is transparency and faith in the judicial system is a must thing that we should do. According to the Police Integrity Research Group, approximately 1,000 people are killed by police every year. Some of them are justified, and we're not saying they're not. But since 2005, nationwide, 98 local police and law enforcement officers have been arrested in fatal shootings. Only 35 of those have been convicted. Highlighted in the Guardian piece that I hand out, they look closely at prosecutors around the country, and 95% of them are elected. So again, this bill is around a conflict of interest bill. They found in 2015 that our very own in Douglas County, and I want to be clear, I'm not attacking Don Klein, but the article speaks of it, so I'm speaking around the article, cleared more officers in on-duty killing than any other prosecutor in the country. Again, I am not saying that Don Klein did something wrong. What I am saying that the perception and the removal from that individual prosecutor, instead installing a special prosecutor, allows the community to have more faith in the system. What we are finding is that in that article, he talks about Don Klein topping the list, that when they looked across the country, special prosecutors only ruled out or only found justifiable homicide in 12%, whereas most of the prosecutors who do not have this conflict are about 80%. That's a significant gap. Now, again, we are not saying that they're all the same, but at the end of the day, there's a conflict of interest from my perception. Mandating the appointment of special prosecutor when someone dies other than natural causes in police custody is, I think, a good thing we should do. The prosecution must have 5 years of experience of criminal or felony litigation. They are afforded 3 special prosecutors with experience in homicide investigations, and they must be from outside the jurisdiction where the death occurred. Again, we are trying to level the transparency and put faith in the system when it comes to in-custody deaths. The fiscal note in this case has little or no impact, but what you'll hear from counties that it will drive up some cost. And the question I really have for this is the cost of a special prosecutor versus the belief in the judicial system. How do you weigh that? I think what we've seen over the last 2 years, when we talk about the community engagement across the state that we've seen, the idea of transparency and the idea of making sure we have faith in the criminal justice system carries more weight than any cost that may occur. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions for Senator White? I do have one for you. So if we pass this, can the Sarpy County attorney call Don Klein and Don Klein call a Sarpy County attorney and do it?
Theoretically, yeah. Theoretically, yes.
Do you think that still, do we need somebody outside of the county attorney's office anywhere?
Well, I guess I got to think about, if OPD has jurisdiction in Sarpy County, then I think that wouldn't be considered outside of the jurisdiction. I can't remember if OPD goes into Sarpy County. We got some weird lines.
I'm not
I don't think so.
sure either.
I don't think so, though.
In very East Omaha?
Yeah, I don't think so, but I'm.
But you're
yeah.
okay having a county attorney from one county come into Omaha, for example, and
Yes.
vice versa?
Correct.
Okay. And you think that'll still promote?
I think
They're
it'll
still county attorneys?
It is, but I think it promotes transparency, at least in some respect.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Senator Wayne?
I have a hearing in revenue, so I'll waive closing.
Okay, thank you. Have a good weekend. We will next take proponent testimony. Okay, how many people intend to testify on this bill? One. So can you alert Senator Hilkeman? Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Eichel.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lathrop and members of the committee. My name is Spike Eichel, S-P-I-K-E. Last name is E-I-C-K-H-O-L-T, appearing on behalf of the ACLU of Nebraska in support of LB 157. We support this bill for the reasons that Senator Wayne said when he introduced the bill. This bill would revert the law back to what it was for actually a number of decades until 2010 when the legislature struck the part that is, well, actually sort of added, when the legislature sort of went back to 2010, the legislature struck the provision that provided for a special prosecutor to be appointed to investigate in-custody deaths and prosecute grand juries that were assembled in response to those in-custody deaths. Just to clarify, this bill does not cover, and this law change that's proposed does not apply to in-custody deaths in which a physician certifies that the death was due to natural causes. So we're not talking about when people pass away when they're elderly in prison or in the jails or something like that, which are technically triggering the grand jury investigation process. This would apply to situations in which someone dies while they were being apprehended by law enforcement or in the custody of law enforcement. And at the time the legislature repealed this law or changed it in 2010, the argument was from the prosecutors and the counties primarily because of fiscal costs. The NACO supported it because to appoint a special prosecutor, whether it's another attorney from a different county or a private attorney in criminal practice, it costs the county some money to do that. And it was primarily promoted as a cost-saving method and an argument that the local county attorneys can see to it, that they are independent from law enforcement, that they can prosecute cases, and they do prosecute cases against law enforcement, and they can handle these as well. But I think that what we've seen in the last few years, and really the last year or so, is a renewed interest and a renewed public discussion regarding police oversight and transparency. And this bill is consistent with that. Even if a special prosecutor would ultimately find that law enforcement was justified or at least not at fault regarding a death, at least having that independent, neutral person, entity, and neutral independent investigator separate from the law enforcement agency in the narrow area of focus, that would at least hopefully assure the public that the grand jury investigation is meaningful, it is legitimate, and any conclusions or non-conclusions that come from it are not based on any kind of protection or ability to protect their own. Even though law enforcement agencies and local prosecutors are technically separate, if you spend any time in a prosecutor's office, you'll see officers walking in and out of there like they work there, and the public sees that, and that's one of the things that I think this bill would do, at least would assure the public that any investigation following an in-custody death is going to be done in a neutral, professional manner. So for those reasons, we would encourage the committee to advance this bill.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Eichel? I don't see any. Thanks for being here today. Any other proponent testimony on LB 157? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Lathrop, members of the Judiciary Committee, for allowing testimony today in opposition of LB 157. My name is Bruce Farrell. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Wahoo. I'm also the second Vice President for the Police Chiefs Association of Nebraska. Pecan currently believes that Nebraska Revised Statute 29-1401 should remain as it currently reads. The Nebraska State Legislature in the past has made changes to 1401 in 2002 and then changed the law back in 2010. When a special prosecutor has been determined by the sitting county attorney to be warranted, county attorneys have made the correct call and appointed them. The vast majority of in-custody deaths in the state come from deaths of persons in a correctional setting, whether they're natural and or suspicious deaths. Each of those under state law require a grand jury. In Johnson County, where the Tecumseh State Penitentiary is located, from 2016 to 2020, there have been 16 grand jury investigations. In 2021, there are currently 10 scheduled so far for that one county. By requiring an appointed special prosecutor with 5 years of criminal litigation, including felony litigation, places an enormous financial burden on that county, especially counties like Johnson County, which are already saddled with other financial burdens regarding that grand jury proceedings. I've personally been an investigator on a number of grand jury proceedings in several jurisdictions where there have been in-custody deaths. I've also had the utmost confidence in those county attorneys who have presided over those grand juries. I've also been involved in a grand jury where a special prosecutor was appointed and the case went spinning out of control. The attorney appointed in that matter was very experienced, over 35 years of experience, but had no grand jury experience and caused the indictment to be dismissed by an error by the special prosecutor. Pecan has faith in our current county attorneys to have the experience, competence, and independence to determine when a special prosecutor should be requested from the district court. Pecan would ask that the committee not move this legislation forward to the floor, and I thank you for your consideration, and I would welcome any questions you may have.
Okay. Senator McKinney.
Thank you. Do you recognize the concerns of community members about the relationship that county attorneys currently have with law enforcement?
I do recognize that, and I do recognize that up until this summer, especially in the city of Omaha and other locations in the state, that those relationships had vastly improved and continue to improving. While we have had that issue since the George Floyd and other instances since the last summer, I've seen that confidence begin to grow back in the communities that we serve based on the outreach that law enforcement has done to try and repair any of those damages. The concern I have, especially with the appearance of transparency with the county attorneys and any contributions by law enforcement organizations, is no different than an argument that if a Nebraska state senator receives a contribution from the Police Officers Association of Omaha and then is not independent enough to vote their own conscience when it comes to any law enforcement bill, pro or against.
You know, second question, not even a question, more so a comment, that I know you say that prior to the summer, relationships and things have improved, but in my community, I would beg to say different. These issues, to me and for members of my community, aren't new. They're not fresh, and when you actually get on the ground in communities like North Omaha, you would see that there are a lot of community members that question the relationships that county attorneys have with the police. I know you're in Wahoo, so I'm not sure how many times you ever venture into North Omaha and actually engage with the community outside of individuals that are in quote-unquote leadership positions. And that's why this is needed, because of a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability. Not to say the county attorney is doing anything wrong, but the perception because of the relationship is the issue.
And I appreciate that comment on your part, Senator. What I will tell you is I retired after 23 years with the Omaha Police Department. The majority of the time I spent in my duties with that agency were working in North Omaha and in South Omaha. The last 10 years working in the gang unit, so I had daily contact with the community in North Omaha and in South Omaha. I had daily contact with people in leadership and began starting in 1999, we began our a concerted effort at outreach within those communities, starting with the Project Safe Neighborhoods program, and then extending into what is now considered the Empowerment Network. I've met Willie Barney. I know a number of the leadership within that. I worked for then Chief Tom Warren. I still communicate with Chief Warren as head of the Urban League. So I'm very acutely aware and have had extensive daily contact within that community and understand and have seen the improvement from when I first came on in 1985 to today. And ever since, and again, I'll just say this, is ever since Chief Spotterer has been the chief, that outreach has been magnified. And so I believe that there are people who do have concerns about that, but I think there's also a great many people who also trust local law enforcement, work with local law enforcement, and believe that we're doing the job that's needed to protect the community and protect the rights of the citizens in those communities.
The people not in the boardrooms and in suit and ties do not trust the relationship that the county attorney and the police have, and they definitely don't trust the gang unit because of their tactics that they have used over the years. Thank you for your testimony, though.
Again, and I'll just finish with this, Senator, is I'm not talking just about boardroom people. I'm talking about standing on people's porches, talking with people in the neighborhood, talking to gang members, being told 10 years later that the efforts that we made in their lives to try and get them to get away from gangs impacted them in a positive way. I've talked with prisoners countless times in the Department of Corrections and in the the Douglas County Corrections. But I have talked to day-to-day people in your community and in South Omaha. It's not just boardroom people. They're the regular folks in those neighborhoods who appreciate what we do, as well as people who don't. But we always make an effort to try and treat people as they would like to be treated.
All right, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Thanks, Chief.
You bet.
Anyone else here as an opponent? Anyone here in the neutral capacity? Seeing none.